Join me, Mark Windows, with Tony Hurst for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT at autonomousmedia.net.
Evening all, welcome to Windows on the World live Sunday night 9 p.m. autonomousmedia.net, windowsontheworld.net, freemanjack.net, TuneIn Radio, and more places coming soon. Blah blah blah. We're not going to talk about the weather. I think this is episode number 19 if you're interested in numbers. Last week we was wading through, bovine excrement, and this week we may well be wading through some more legal pungent effluents. So, how's your week been, Mark? Let's get on with it.
It's been all right, Tony. I've actually now reached the stage with this case, which I haven't been speaking about much before, but have referred to, and it's now going public because it's the last chance for Kent Police to remedy. There have been some incredibly interesting revelations in the last week that I can share with you. I wrote to Lord Ashcroft, Chair of Crime Stoppers, and as a result of what I've said to him, the person whose profile was uploaded to Crime Stoppers and should never have been there in the most wanted gallery has been removed, along with, guess what, nearly 250 other images from the most wanted gallery. So Kent Police most wanted gallery has now been taken down as a result of an email I did to Lord Ashcroft.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing story. I've been following along with you in this story for, some time now. It must have been going on a year at least, doesn't it, originally? And, I don't know. I'm looking forward to you exposing more of this to people because it's a big one. And I've just posted the link to Crime Stoppers Most Wanted from Kent Police website on in our chat there, so people can see it for themselves. Because there's only one person there now, and that person's not actually wanted by Kent Police, he's wanted by Devon and Cornwall, but believed to be in Kent. So there seems to be an admission, at least, by taking it all away, that something major is going wrong on that website.
Yes, and Lord Ashcroft has acted accordingly as Chair of Trustees, which I'm incredibly grateful for because he's done something that nobody else seemed to be able to do. Crime Stoppers is just a part of the problem. They're a kind of symptom of the problem. The real problem is the police and the CPS, though, Tony.
Yeah, it's endemic right the way through. We've seen some pretty amazing responses, and we've got a few audio clips that you've picked up here along the way, and I've been privy to the emails that have been coming backwards and forwards. And I've got to say, it's a shocker for me.
Well, it was even more shocking for me because what I'm seeing really is something like crime farming. It means that the police and the CPS are withholding defence evidence and, in my case, actively blocking it. Now, this is from mainstream news, just so we can get into this issue, Tony, because many people, obviously, they're not going to be familiar with the CPS and the police procedures unless they've been in contact with them, and many people obviously have. But this is from mainstream media. This is from The Guardian in June 2017. It states, the police and Crown Prosecution Service have been accused of failing to disclose crucial information about cases, resulting in defendants' right to a fair trial potentially being undermined, according to a new report compiled by HM Inspectorate of Constabulary and the HM Crown Prosecution Service Inspectorate. So these are the bodies that overlook the police and the Crown Prosecution Service. It found that it was rare for police officers to tell prosecutors about evidence that could undermine their case or assist the accused, known in legal terms as unused material. Now, that's a bit of an underestimation of what the material they're talking about. We're talking about defence evidence here, often very important defence evidence. It goes on, their recording of sensitive and non-sensitive evidence was routinely poor, it said, adding that prosecutors, in turn, were failing to challenge the poor recording of material and carry out their duty to consider what to hand over to the defence throughout a case. This leads to delays and even to trials collapsing, it said. Well, that's an understatement in our case. There is a culture of defeated acceptance where authorities and lawyers would seek to work around the failings rather than fixing them, it said. Now, in our case, that was very, very true of the legal counsel. They don't really push the CPS. They don't push the CPS, and they certainly don't really challenge the police. In fact, they don't want to challenge the police at all. Inspectors drew their conclusions after examining 146 Crown Court case files, including 56 that the CPS identified as failing as a result of disclosure issues. Now, that's a lot of cases, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it's not just cases collapsing. I'd say they're looking on the bright side there. What's happening, as you found out, is that cases are being perverted. The course of justice is being perverted.
Absolutely, Tony. Let's just carry on with this first to give the listener a little bit more background. Inspectors found that in 55.5% of the cases they reviewed, there were obvious disclosure issues before a defendant was charged. Now, this is incredibly important, and it's what happened in my case. The case that I was involved in goes way beyond what anybody could possibly imagine, but I'm sure the people who've been involved in matters with the CPS will resonate with this. And what I want to do tonight, Tony, is put out an appeal to anybody who's basically had their evidence buried by the police and the CPS. If they can get in touch, we're going to do future shows on this, and let's set up an organisation to challenge the CPS. The Crown Prosecution Service in this country is not fit for purpose, and I'm not overstating that. That's just a fact. Now, okay, so it says that inspectors found that in 55% of the cases they reviewed, there were obvious disclosure issues before defendant was charged. Prosecutors only dealt fully with these issues in only 1 in 4 cases, and in 38.3% of cases, they were not dealt with at all. Zoe Gascoigne, chairman of the Criminal Law Solicitors Association, blamed the emphasis on speedy justice to churn through court cases in a time of cuts to public services. Now, cuts to public services has got nothing to do with that. That's a huge cop-out, that. It's got nothing to do with cuts to public services. It's got to do with people within the CPS putting you into an automated email kind of loop which never gets anywhere and you can never get out of it. And in the end, they just fob you off and then they say, we're not going to speak to you anymore. And that's what happens. So that's a huge understatement that she's made there anyway. She added that defendants would be horrified if they knew the extent of the problem. Now, that is true. That is absolutely true. Because in this case, we're going to talk about tonight, that's exactly what happened. Now, I emailed Miss Gascoigne about the very serious failings in a case which shows the CPS to be worse than useless and complicit in obfuscation and denying evidence. There was no reply from her. And this is typical of the legal profession in general, who do not wish to push too hard in case their careers get damaged. So they'll highlight these things to a certain degree, but never actually do anything about it. So I emailed her about this very serious miscarriage of justice, no reply. Now, it could be that she didn't get the email, but I did email her firm, and it said that the email had been delivered. Now, she carries on. She said clients could be put in a dreadful position of being advised to plead guilty to receive maximum credit without all the evidence having been presented to the court. What do they mean, maximum credit? That just means to get a third off a sentence. So if you're innocent, they're going, well, plead guilty anyway.
Well, it sounds more like Americanising the system again, because they've been doing that out there for many years, haven't they? Been making it extremely difficult for you to plead innocence, even if you are innocent, and then kind of making it nice and attractive for you to plead guilty, because they're going to do far less harm to you if you do that, apparently. But that's what it looks like to me, what's happening here.
Absolutely. It is frightening when someone who doesn't have a previous conviction, and a conviction can have a life-changing impact, she said. Well, of course it can have a life-changing impact. So you get put in prison for something you haven't done. That is a life-changing thing, isn't it, really? It's okay for these people on the other side who are just raking the money in, basically, and doing the odd kind of, the cheap case for people. But this and legal aid, a friend of mine got hoiked in for, it was something quite comedic, actually. He said something to a London Underground employee, which I won't repeat, but it's incredibly funny. And he said, if I called you a whatever, then you'd listen to me, wouldn't you? And then alarm bells went off and he was arrested. But when he got to the police station, the duty solicitor said, well, come on, let's get on with it. This is Tesco's, not Harrods, you know.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
If that's the sort of justice you're going to get, it's like the reduced section at Tesco's, you know.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I know. So police officers rarely told prosecutors about evidence that could undermine their case or assist the defendant, known as unused material, and police's recording of sensitive information was routinely poor. Well, we're going to go into that tonight. In this case, it was non-existent. One example was a man who was accused of robbery who said he was the victim of a violent drug dealer. His claim was not investigated by the police or the CPS before he was charged, and he was held in custody for 6 months. Shortly before the trial, a review discovered police intelligence that matched his claim, and the case was dismissed. Now, in many cases, the police are just going to cover that up. So there must be lots of cases coming up where people are just getting thrown in prison for things they haven't done. And this is what I wanted to get to. So anyone who's been a victim of this, do get in touch with us through Autonomous Media or windowsontheworld.net, because it's about time we started challenging the CPS and the police. And we'll get onto that in a minute with the case we're going to talk about. But
I think we might need to put out an appeal for some more staff at all, might we, in the circumstances?
Yeah, we've got to expand the operation, Tony. You know, I mean, the thing is, multitasking is not the word, is it?
No.
However, it carries on. In a digital age where vast quantities of evidence no longer need to be copied onto paper files and can simply be stored on a hard drive, there was less reason to restrict disclosure due to the costs involved, the report said. Well, the whole point here is that they can actually make a phone call and it's not logged at all. So if you put in a complaint and they phone you back and fob you off, then that's not on the system. And that's what's happened to me. Now, in the case I was involved with, the CPS was complicit in failing to disclose evidence. Their automated complaint system is merely a control system for withholding information using a variety of excuses. Same with the police. Same with the police professional standards. Same with the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And the same with the legal department within the police. Well, within Kent Police anyway. The emails are unsigned, and those who are available by phone cannot help as they have no knowledge of any cases and cannot make decisions. So basically, when you phone the CPS up about something, they can't help you. So they send you back in this loop of kind of unanswered emails that just build up. And all of a sudden, you'll get something back after 6 weeks, and it won't be what you've asked. And then when you ask them to respond to what you've asked, they say they can't. And they don't want to speak to you anymore. They will actually stop speaking to you. And this is what happened to me. And it's quite incredible because, well, we could put that first call to the CPS on, actually, Tony, before we go into the case.
Yeah, okay. I've got that ready now.
Yeah, put that on. And it's quite long. We might interrupt it and talk over it if that's okay.
Okay. Well, it's 5 minutes, this one, it's saying. Okay. Here we go.
Hello, CPS.
Hello there, hi. I've been in touch with the CPS since the 17th of July about a case that was heard on the 26th of June, case number 8135. I sent a 67-point document relating to the case of which I'm a witness in, and now I am an advocate for the defendant because she's not in the country. I haven't had a satisfactory response, and I've now been told by the CPS that I wasn't recorded as a witness. Well, I was in court, I gave evidence, I'm recorded with the solicitors, with the CPS. My complaint was about the way that the case had been presented by the police and why my evidence was blocked as I was the only defence witness. There's a 67-point document which was never even considered. Basically, I've had responses which are just generic, and it's clear that they have not read what I've stated because they haven't responded to anything I've stated. And also, we requested the defendant's audio CD from Kent Police on the 15th of November 2015. The case was heard on the 26th of June 2017. We never had the audio CD before the court case. There's been serious breaches in this case, and I need to bring them to the CPS, and I'm being blocked, and I need to escalate the matter.
Okay, can I take your email address so I can just check these emails on our system?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just check that for you.
Yes,
About the DVD from the police, that would be something that you'd have to contact the police about?
Hang on. No, there's a problem here. This is what I need to get very clear. The police blocked my evidence, and the police have been completely uncooperative. When the court case happened, I wanted the police to be brought to court for the very reason that not only did they block my evidence, they assaulted me, and the assault was filmed. The tablet was taken into custody at Medway Police Station, and the files were wiped. There was no chain of evidence. The bag wasn't logged in or out, which is in itself a breach of police rules, and we've got evidence of that. Now, the other thing is that I was told by the CPS and the prosecution that no mention of the police will be brought into the court because of my complaint. I wanted them in the court to be cross-examined. All parties agreed that there would be no mention of the police. In summing up, the judge stated that both myself and Miss Rye, the defendant, were aggressive to the police and told them to leave, which completely undermined my evidence. He read that out to the jury. That was a serious breach of trust that judge involved himself in there. And whether it was a mistake or not, it's completely skewed the case. And Miss Rye was found guilty. She'd also been put on the Crime Stoppers website in March 2016 and remained on there, and also in Kent News Online, and it said 56 people wanted for crimes including rape, child trafficking and burglary, and her picture was in the corner. Now, this assault that took place was presented to the CPS by the police, and my evidence was blocked. I was thrown out of the police station when I went to give evidence the next day, and the police completely blocked my evidence. I sincerely believe that the case would not have had any merit if my evidence had been put forward. I was the only defence witness. There were no other witnesses to this alleged assault, and the woman who made the claim had been drinking for 8 hours, was on 3 types of medication, had three epileptic fits. None of this was brought up in court, and there's much evidence that was not put in front of the CPS before the case, and that's really what I want to report. But basically, we never had that audio CD, and I believe that Miss Rye was requesting that I gave evidence while I was at the station, and that's why we haven't got the audio CD, because there's many places in the transcript where it says inaudible, and the case should not have gone ahead without us getting that information.
Okay. Right, okay. Well, I've got your emails up here. So I'll just have a quick look at those.
Thank you.
Okay, and were you looking for a response to that email specifically today?
Well, I'm looking for a response in the respect that they've stated that they have no record. The CPS stated they have no record of me as a witness. I want to know why they have no record of me as a witness.
I'll pass the information on, and then hopefully you'll get a better response.
No, thanks very much. Thank you.
That's okay.
Well, the lady sounds like a nice lady, but pretty lost. Don't really know what to do, does she?
She was really kind of helpful, that girl, and I felt sorry for her because I kept having to phone her up because the automated system didn't respond. Now, what didn't come out in that really was that the police had told me to get in touch with the CPS about the audio, which is ridiculous. And now what they're saying 2 years later is that the IPCC, in responding to me, have stated that they can't send it to me. Well, I never asked for it. They're citing data protection. Well, I never asked for the CD. It was requested by Saunders solicitors. It was basically, they were the recipient of it. It was their address, and I sent something on their behalf with all their requests for the CD. In other words, Mark, we've requested it several times. There's been no response. So the IPCC, in response, are saying we can't send it to you. That's me, under data protection. But I didn't ask for it. It was ordered by them, and it was ordered by them since 2015, November 2015. So then you get onto professional standards and explain the situation, and they won't speak to you again. They won't pick up the phone. It's absolutely incredible. Now, let's play another audio. This one was to the Wanted Persons Bureau because of the emails I had from the legal people and also from Crime Stoppers and, of course, the police, I got a series of emails which led me into the Wanted Persons Bureau at Kent Police and explained the situation to them. And basically what I think's happened is they've shut the whole thing down, because the last time that the lawyer heard anything was Friday, and they phoned the lawyer up and they've said that he has to go now to the CPS. But that means that that's not on the record, you see. So basically they've fobbed me off by not answering the phone, and they've never disclosed the evidence. And now they're stating that we have to go back to the CPS. So the whole point about this transcript as well was that there seems to be time missing off it. And also there are things on the transcript that Miss Rai could not have said, because her first language is Hindi, and it has phrases on there which are totally alien to her, and they sound much more like a police officer said it. And she also stated in her testimony that she never said she was drunk, and they seem to have put in lines in there. I can't prove this until we get the audio, and they don't want us to have the audio. Why don't they want us to have the audio? I've no idea, but that's the situation, and this must be happening to many, many people. But I will go into the details of the case and what happened, Tony, because I think we're kind of at that stage now, yeah.
Yeah, go on then. Well, it's obvious to me why they don't want you to have the audio, so it'll prove them to be liars.
Yes. Yes.
It's the only reason, that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, go on then.
Yeah, well, what happened was, on the night of the incident, this woman had alleged an assault, and there were no witnesses. So when the police came round in the early hours of the morning, I said, "Come in, officers, I'll tell you what happened." Officer 1 pushed me in the chest. Officer 2 twisted my arm. At that point, I was so shocked, I told them to get off the property. And Miss Rai, who was accused of the assault, was filming all this on her tablet. And she said, "Don't do that, guys. That's not good." And they just said to her, "That's you nicked," and dragged her off. Now, the tablet was taken into custody, and I went to pick her up at the station the next evening. She'd been in custody for 19 hours without her medication. She has very strong thyroid medication. Now, let's get to the evidence about the tablet first, because that's really important. So when she came out, she had an evidence bag that had not been logged in or out, which is chain of evidence completely ignored, and the bag was actually ripped open and the files had been deleted. Now, this, I don't know how many times this happens, but is this routine? I want to find out from people. Have they been assaulted by the police when they were a witness? Because it looks to me as though they were doing everything they could to block my witness evidence. Because when I went in the next night to give evidence, because obviously my evidence had been blocked by the assault the night before, I was told to wait in the custody suite because I went in with the duty solicitor was outside. Otherwise, I'd never got in. That Medway police station is like a bunker. There's people outside going, "How'd you get in here? There's no doors." So you have to go around the back. And the duty solicitor was coming out and having a cigarette. So I said, "Are you seeing Miss Rai?" She said, "Yes, I'm seeing her next." She says, "Here's her medication. I want to give a witness statement." And so I waited in the custody suite, went to the toilet once, and after a couple of hours, this took ages, I asked to go again. And they said, "We don't let people do that." I said, "I've just been in." 2 coppers came out, they surrounded me, and they said, "Our desk sergeant wants you to leave." And I said, "Why? I've been here for hours, I'm waiting for somebody." And they said, "He says you've been banging on the door." I said, I haven't banged on the door at all." So they surrounded me and said, "Well, we're telling you to leave," and kicked me out. So my evidence was blocked twice by Kent Police. And the actual procedural errors in this case, there's so many of them, we can go into them, but I can also go into what I wrote to Lord Ashcroft. And he actually remedied the situation with Crime Stoppers. But let's get into the Crime Stoppers issue next, because this woman was not wanted. Now, there was a pre-trial hearing, and the judge took it upon himself to issue an arrest warrant for her, even though he was told that she was visiting her 96-year-old grandmother in Nepal, who was dying. Now, this poor girl sent a photograph back to the lawyer of an old lady with an oxygen mask on. And the lawyer's gone, well, it doesn't really prove anything. I said, I know what you mean. But she just sent a picture. Here's my granny, and she's in hospital. And we thought she's going to die, right? So they've issued this arrest warrant. The next thing is, one of her friends has got in touch with her and said, you're on Crime Stoppers. And so, of course, she's petrified. She's up as a most wanted criminal. She's not familiar with the law in this country. She'd been racially and sexually abused in her own business in Chatham, and the police had failed to follow it up. She was so badly injured that she had to go to counselling. So why is it that Kent police failed to investigate a serious physical assault when the assailants were known to them? The victim described the person and actually knew where they lived. But in a case like this, they can't take witness evidence. And the evidence that was presented to the CPS was the word of somebody who was on 3 types of medication, had been drinking for 6 to 8 hours, and had 3 epileptic fits before giving evidence. Her son, who was with her all the time, never witnessed an assault. I was there the whole time, and there was no assault. The woman had fallen over. She'd tripped over. She'd been asked to leave and tripped over outside and forced her way back in with a small cut on her head. Now, when I said this to the lawyer, he said, well, if we bring you in as a witness, she'll probably get acquitted. He said, there is a problem, though. I said, what's that? He said, well, it's Maidstone. He said, if you get an all-white jury at Maidstone, there's a very good chance she'll be convicted. And he was right. But the point is this, that every single part of this case has been corrupted, even to the point where the judge has read out things in court which were not meant to be in the transcript. All parties had decided to keep the police out of this because I wanted the police in court. And the lawyer said, well, it's not a good idea because they'll lie their socks off and the jury will probably believe them. I said, I don't care. I still want them in court because they perverted the course of justice. We've got the evidence. We've got the evidence back. Maybe we can find out what batch number it is. But we've got that evidence back. And we may be able to recover the files that have been taken off because obviously they've done it. It hasn't gone into the station lab or anything. They haven't had time. So they know that they've been caught out. So they've just wiped them off themselves. So these 2 officers who perverted the course of justice have actually presented this case initially in a completely biased and wrong light because they've refused to take evidence.
Yes, a sad state of affairs here. You're saying there that one thing that I noticed that might cause a bit of disdain amongst some of the listeners was about the Maidstone jury being all white and that she got convicted. But to me, it sounds like she was convicted because the evidence was suppressed. Rather.
Yes, that's it. But I'm just telling you what the lawyer said. I mean, this is the lawyer telling me that. It's not my opinion. It was the lawyer's opinion.
Yeah. And another question that's going to come up for a lot of people, is there previous history between Miss Rye, yourself and the police where they might have wanted to go out of their way to have done something like this to you?
Not to me, no. I'm not known to them at all. I'm not sure whether she was known to them. This lady had a few issues in the respect that she'd been violently assaulted and she had to go to counselling. And she did have a bit of a temper, but she didn't assault anybody. That's the point.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the past to see what reasons the police might have had to act in this way. Because
I can't work it out, Tony. I can't work it out whether this is something that they do routinely or is it just something that they reserve for people they don't like. I'm not sure.
I don't know. What was the other thing I was going to say? Right, in a court, as far as I'm aware, although I've not legally trained, obviously, but I have picked up a bit over the last few years. One of the strongest bits of evidence that anyone can have or witnesses is first-hand independent witness testimony. That is strong evidence. And they have gone right out of their way to suppress that and to, like you say, pervert the course of justice here. I mean, that's a big step for these people to be taking. And as for your memory card, you might want to bring that over here at some point, and we'll have a go at it with some recovery software.
No, that sounds great, Tony. It would be good to get that actually back again, and that would help a lot. But what I've found here is that it doesn't matter who you complain to internally, you will not get any response. And it's been worse and worse and worse. You get into these sections of the police, like the legal department, who are completely aware that this CD, this interview CD, was requested in 2015, and they are still saying that we can't have it, and using really dismal excuses, like saying I can't have it when I never asked for it, and then saying we can't have it because there's going to be an appeal. This is the right of the person in custody to have an audio. It is their right. Those things are stored in a database at the police station, and they're logged in and out, signed for. Nobody can tamper with it, allegedly. Yeah. And they should be given to the person. That is the right of the person. I wrote into their legal department, and they told me that. They told me that.
Well, full disclosure is also another vital part of any trial, is it not? Surely. It is, isn't it?
This is what the whole show's about, Tony. It's the fact that in 55% of cases, and this is by the inspectorate, CPS inspectorate, they're saying that defence evidence is being withheld.
Yes, and what was that they're calling it now? Something evidence, unused evidence or something?
Unused, yes.
So this is more newspeak, isn't it? This is suppression of evidence. This is...
They're minimising what evidence actually is. So they're saying defence evidence doesn't count as much as prosecution evidence, and basically it's unused material. Well, okay, so it's not used, so it is unused, but that doesn't mean it's like something that's been discarded on the cutting room floor. It means that it's evidence that's not been presented. That's actually what it means.
Yeah, well, to me, unused material equals suppressed evidence. That's the same thing, is it not? That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So it's newspeak. We already had terms for what they was doing, and it's not the first time. It's not a new thing. The police have been doing this in certain cases for many, many years. And we had terms for it. It was called suppressing evidence. So now we've got newspeak telling us that it's unused material, which kind of takes the glow off of it, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes. It undermines it, you see. And that's a lot of what this is about. It's all about undermining, which happened all the way through this case, and obviously many more, because this has got to be a microcosm of a bigger picture. I mean, if they can do that in this case, then it must be happening in other cases. There's no doubt about that. The thing is that a lot of people probably have not got the kind of dogged determination or even ability to stick this out, because once you get demoralised by these people and they treat you with utter contempt, I mean, the people on the switchboard, they can be very pleasant, but they can't do anything. All they can do is send you back into this automated kind of spiral of nothing. And in the end, I said, look, I don't really care. I need to be put through to somebody who can actually help me. And maybe we should play one of these other audios, actually. This is from... We haven't played this one yet. This is the Wanted Persons Bureau at Kent Police. And I got an internal number and I explained something to them.
Okay.
This is Chris Wright, it's called.
Righto. Ready now, then?
Yep.
Here we go.
Hello, Wanted Persons Bureau. How can I help you?
Hello there. Hi. I spoke to Christopher Wright on Friday, and we're looking into an audio CD which was requested. A lady was put on Crime Stoppers sometime between February and March in 2016, and she should never have been put on there. I've got onto Crime Stoppers. They're investigating at last. But what we've found is there's no record of a custody CD. Now, I've explained to Christopher Wright the situation around this because I was the only witness in an event that happened, and she subsequently was charged with an assault. Now, my witness statement was never taken. My evidence was blocked by Kent Police. I was assaulted by Kent Police. Kent Police destroyed evidence. This is all being put forward now. But now we've found out that on the interview, there's no audio tape reference numbers, and there's no signature of interviewing officer. And also, there's real big problems with the time anomalies on it. And the lady was under severe distress when she was being interviewed. She takes 4 very strong thyroid tablets a day. She'd been in custody for over 16 hours before she was interviewed. And I took her medicine to the station, and I wanted to make a witness statement also, because obviously the police had prevented me from doing this the night before. So I got into the custody suite, and the duty solicitor was there, and I got in and I gave the medicine in before the interview. However, the medicine was only given to the person after the interview was concluded, and she was clearly in a state of distress during the interview. Now, this interview transcript is not complete, and it looks as though it's been tampered with. So I really do need to speak to somebody about it. I need a meeting face-to-face with Kent Police now to go through this, because there's been quite...
well, what I'm going to do, just to interrupt you, and since you spoke to Chris on Friday, I'm just going to pass you back over to him now, and hopefully he'll have a few answers for you, okay?
Oh, right, sorry, I thought he wasn't there, that's why I told you all that. Okay.
No, he's here, don't worry, I'll just pass you over now if that's all right.
Yeah, but just to confirm, you're aware of the email that I sent you, and you're aware of the concerns that were raised within it?
Yes, and I've sent that straight on to our Legal Services Department and Police Standards Department.
Oh, right, that's fine then. No, that's fine. Thank you very much. That's all right, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they're going to... if I was sitting in your camp, I would phone them up and log it.
So you didn't log it, is that what you're saying?
I've sent it to them, but their response is, the fact is, they would obviously, if they need to speak to you in the first instance...
Right.
They've got a full breakdown of it,
right.
And the email that you sent me, I've sent to them.
Right.
However, I'm not sure I don't know why you wouldn't want to call them to make sure that it's all... I have
called them. There's nobody there.
There is someone there, and there will be. So if you phone 101, ask to be put through to...
I've done it.
Legal. Explain the problem.
I've gone through to legal. I've gone through to legal. There's no answer. I've gone through to professional standards, and there's no answer.
Okay, well, I'd suggest definitely trying it again, because I had an answer when I called, so I'm sure that I don't believe that they'll be avoiding you. It's just, I'll definitely give them...
Well, he didn't believe that they were avoiding me, but they actually were. I'd spoken to someone at Professional Standards the other day, and she sent an email back from the IPCC telling me that they weren't going to give me the audio when I never asked for it in the first place. When I phoned her up, consequently, there was no answer. So she was ignoring me. I was told by the switchboard that Rose Tunbridge was available, and then her green light was on. But she wasn't answering it to me. So this is what's happening. So you get to a point where you need an answer, and they just ignore you. It's incredible, isn't it, Tom?
It is, yeah. And I'm thinking other avenues as well. What else is going on with this case? Is it's dereliction of duty, is it not? It's malfeasance, maybe. It's certainly incompetence.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, another thing is, I already had a reference number from the Forces Control Room, I think it's called, and they gave me a reference number, FCR/171017/1548. And the legal department were in possession of that. So the legal department have been asked for this many times, but not just by me, by the defence. The lawyer is asking for it. So that's the police defying the Crown.
So does the lawyer not have somewhere that he can go with this? Why is it being left to you to have to deal with all this? Is that not what lawyers get paid for, to deal with all this legal nonsense?
I think we're getting into a very interesting area, Tony, and it's called legal aid. And basically what happened was, because I have uncovered something here, and it's very, very uncomfortable, I don't think the lawyer wants to go there. I don't think the lawyer did a bad job, but, well, the problem was this, that interview CD was never supplied before the court case. And he said that he had it. There'd been a mistake, a procedural error with them. Because it took so long to go to court, he wasn't aware that the audio he had was not the interview CD. So in this case, everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. And then you've got this malevolence behind it of people willfully trying to shut it down, shut you down, because they've got what they wanted. They've got a conviction. They've solved another crime. Well, this is what they're actually doing. It's called crime farming. I've invented this new word. I'm sure that's, well, Kent is the Garden of England, isn't it, Tony? So crime farming in Kent. There you go.
Yeah, nice. Just what they need.
Well, it is. Some things have come out of this which are very interesting, which we'll go into. We'll go into the Crime Stoppers issue. Maybe we should play the Crime Stoppers audio, Tony.
Okay, it's ready now. Here we go.
Okay, is that better?
Right, yes, I can't hear myself anymore. Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Right, okay, what's the crime you have information about?
Well, actually, it's about wrongdoing. You seem to have a new line for professional wrongdoing and misconduct, that sort of thing.
What's actually happened?
Okay, well, I'll tell you. I've just phoned up Crime Stoppers, the charitable trust,
Okay.
and I asked a question, very serious matter, about somebody who's been placed on Crime Stoppers who shouldn't be there. I didn't even get to the question, and the lady asked me what company I was from. When I said I wasn't from a company, and I said, you're a charitable trust, she said, I don't like your manner, and she put the phone down, and now she's blocked my call.
Which number did you phone?
Which number? It's 0208 835 3700.
And what did you want to speak to them about?
Well, I'm doing an investigation into how people end up on Crime Stoppers, because
What do you mean end up on Crime Stoppers? Nobody ends up on Crime Stoppers.
Oh yes, they do. Oh, they do.
No, they don't. Crime Stoppers is just a call centre who pass information on. We don't end up on Crime Stoppers.
No, but people end up on the Crime Stoppers website as most wanted. That's correct, isn't it?
There is a most wanted website, yes.
And how do people end up on there? Do you know?
Well, we wouldn't give that information.
You wouldn't give that information.
No.
I've previously been told by Crime Stoppers that it's the police who upload the pictures.
Yeah, for various reasons, the police would put, say they're wanted, people are wanted, etc.
And what criteria? I'm just interested in what criteria Crime Stoppers use to delineate who should be on there.
Well, I wouldn't know that, and nobody would give you that information. I wouldn't think that's company information.
Well, it's not company information because you're a charitable trust, so you are liable and duty bound.
But due to the nature of the sensitivity of the work, then that sort of information wouldn't be passed on.
Okay, so I was told previously that it was the police who uploaded the pictures. The reason I'm doing a story on this is because I was a witness in a trial recently, and the person had been put on the Crime Stoppers website while she was on holiday visiting her dying grandmother in Nepal. And despite the lawyer pointing out that this person was vulnerable and also she intended to attend the trial, which didn't happen until 2 years later, she was paraded as a wanted criminal on Crime Stoppers and is still there to this day. And my complaints have gone into Kent Police, who've now seen the emails from the Warrants and Tasking Department at Kent. They've been looked into because this woman was so traumatised by what happened, her mental health issues increased, and she went on to psychiatric treatment in Nepal, and we have all the letters for that. Now,
But I'm just going to stop you a minute because there is nothing that I can do here, but what I can appreciate you're saying is you have a complaint ongoing with the police, and that's all I would have advised you and would have thought that you were able to do in this case, because it would have been the police that wanted the person, not Crime Stoppers.
However, Crime Stoppers is a charitable trust, is that correct?
It's a charity.
It's a charitable trust.
It's a charity.
No, it's a charitable trust.
Well, no, I would say Crime Stoppers is a charity.
So you don't know that it's a charitable trust?
Well, as I just said to you, I'm not going to argue with you. Crime Stoppers is a charity.
Oh, well, I'm not arguing. I'm giving you a fact. It's a charitable trust.
Right. Okay. I don't understand the point of this conversation.
Well, the point of the conversation is that I've been treated with contempt when I asked a question.
Right. Okay. Can I just ask you to hold on 1 second, please, because I need to ask somebody for advice because I don't understand what you're trying to ask.
Oh, well, I'll put it very simply. I'll put it very simply. I need to speak to someone in the Crime Stoppers legal department, and this woman has slammed the phone down on me. That's all I'm asking, is I need to speak to someone in the legal department because I'm preparing a story which is going to go nationwide.
Right, okay, I'm going to pass you on to one of my shift leaders. Is that okay?
Well, it's the legal department I need, really.
Okay, well, there isn't a legal department here, so let me put you on to a shift leader, my superior.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, then.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Crime Stoppers. You're through to a shift leader. How can I help?
Well, I hope you can help me. I phoned up Crime Stoppers Charitable Trust because I needed to get some information on the 0208 number. The lady there, when I...
On an 0208 number?
Yes.
Okay, that would have been our central office.
Okay, so what she's done is slammed the phone down me and blocked the call. I can't get through now. Now, all this I was asking for was a little information, and she got very defensive and then asked me what company I was from. And then she said she didn't like my manner and put the phone down. So first of all, there's a complaint there. But what I really wanted to find out was I phoned up Crime Stoppers over a year ago about somebody who'd been placed on Crime Stoppers. Now, as you might be aware, recently there was a case where 2 PCSOs framed a man by putting his picture on Crime Stoppers. It was in the national press.
Right.
So I've now got onto warrants and tasking at Kent Police for the complaint which I wanted somebody at Crime Stoppers to help me address, because Crime Stoppers is a charitable trust. I've just spoken to a lady who told me it wasn't, when Crime Stoppers actually is a charitable trust, and she said she wasn't going to argue with me, and it was a charity. I said, no, it's a charitable trust, has to work for the benefit and the interests of the public, and that's correct, isn't it?
Well, it's a charitable trust, a charity, it's all the same.
It's not the same.
Well, we are both. We are a charity. We are a charitable trust.
Okay. Now, I need to speak to someone at Crime Stoppers. This story's going to go out, by the way, and I wanted to give Crime Stoppers a chance to respond. Because...
Right, if you've spoken to our central office, who would obviously be the people that you need to speak to, and they've unfortunately terminated the call on you, there's nothing more that I can do here in operations. That's something that's something you're going to need to actually take up with central office. We're separate entities. So,
okay, so you're saying that I've got to phone them back when they've blocked my call?
I would advise that you write a letter.
Well, there isn't time for that. The article's going out on Monday. I just
you've done what you can. If central office decided to block your calls, then you've attempted. That's fine. Leave it at that. All right. Okay, because obviously we take calls from members of the public here, so we are extremely busy. So I'm going to have to cut this.
Okay, wait a minute. Hang on a minute, though. Wait a minute. Right. You are a charitable trust, aren't you?
I'm going to have to cut this call short. Remember, but if you want to complain about central office, you need to write a letter. Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Well, this is the problem, you see, and that first call I made, I haven't played it. I don't want to keep playing these calls. They get a bit tedious, really, but I think they're showing people that there's no way of actually getting a response. So I took it up to a different level, and we're going to talk about that in a little while. But it's absolutely incredible that the people who work within Crime Stoppers do not know it's a charitable trust. And the trustees of Crime Stoppers Charitable Trust are liable for everything those people on those phones are saying. And that is what is very important about understanding what a trust is and what a charitable trust is. Because trustees have liabilities, duties and responsibilities. They are under oath. It's not like a company where you just have directors and limited liability.
Yeah.
With a charitable trust, they have full liability. And this is where the solution came in, which was very, very interesting.
What would their oath be?
Well, your oath as a trustee is under God, and you have to uphold the constitution of that trust, what it is about. And all charitable trusts work for the benefit and in the interests of the public. And it doesn't matter what they do, what sector they work in. Those are the general rules of a charitable trust. So the oath and duty of the people who sit on that board of trustees is liability for anything that goes wrong. They have to address it. And this is where it starts to get interesting, because out of sheer desperation or sheer inspiration, I decided to contact the chair of the board of trustees of Crime Stoppers. And I wrote him the following email. Now, let's go through this. It's quite interesting, this, Tony, isn't it? We're starting to get to the meat and potatoes of the matter, I think. Mm-hmm. And, God, I've got so much stuff here. It's absolutely incredible. I have a folder which I only started. This is the latest folder. And I must have 40 or 50 responses or non-responses from the police, the CPS, and even the IPCC. Here's the email I wrote a week ago. To Lord Ashcroft and Board of Trustees, Crime Stoppers Charitable Trust, please take notice. As Chair of Board of Trustees, this email is for the attention of Lord Ashcroft only. Dear Sir, I wish to bring to your attention some very serious issues regarding the Crime Stoppers website and the criteria for uploading people's photographs to Most Wanted by the police. The emails below make it absolutely clear that in this case, and possibly many more, the person whose life has been ruined and trial has been prejudiced should never have been placed on the Crime Stoppers Most Wanted. As at the time she was placed on the site and paraded like a dangerous criminal, she was in fact visiting her grandmother in Nepal. Miss Rye was placed on the site in March 2016. Her trial had no date set and was eventually heard in her absence in June 2017. The whole process is now under investigation. As you will see below, Miss Rye remains on page 6 of Crime Stoppers Most Wanted. As Chair of Trustees, I am requesting your urgent response to this matter. There was no evidence against Miss Rye, and witness evidence was blocked and evidence withheld and destroyed by Kent Police. Miss Rye was also paraded as Most Wanted by Kent Online, with their libellous heading, which they created, wanted for rape, robbery, people smuggling, and more. Her picture was in the right-hand corner, by the way, the top right-hand corner, most prominent, so that's a clear libel. Okay, so this is just one of the many other issues in this case which is now under investigation. As Chair, I request that you honour your position as trustee and act accordingly. Any response such as "it is all down to the police" is not acceptable. I am holding you and the Board of Trustees to your oath and duty. This matter is in the public interest and follows the framing of an innocent man by two malicious and lying PCSO officers who uploaded his picture to Crime Stoppers and stated he was wanted for a hit-and-run offence earlier this year. The two are now in prison. Now, following are the emails and the response from Tasking and Warrants, and this is from 2016, 24th of May. And this was to Mr. Thorburn at Crime Stoppers. This is from Miss Rye's solicitor. Dear Mr. Thorburn, we write in relation to our above-named client, Miss Rye, who appears on your website as one of Kent's most wanted. We are slightly surprised at this, as it was explained in open court at Maidstone that Miss Rye is in Nepal, her home country, where she's looking after a 95-year-old grandmother. It is not clear, therefore, why the Kent police have decided to pass you her details. She is a woman of good character who was pleaded not guilty, and a trial date has been set in January 2017. We are a little concerned that the presentation of her as a most wanted criminal may prejudice her case in front of the jury. Perhaps you could inform us as to how her details appeared on your website and whether you can now give some consideration to taking this down now that we have supplied you with the information above. That's from the lawyer. Now, this is from Mr. Duffy at Warrants in Kent, coordinators, Tasking and Warrants Department in Kent, which is basically the same number as the Wanted Persons Bureau. who we spoke to earlier, and who passed on those things to the legal department and professional standards. With these things, it's best to actually involve as many of them as possible, because they can keep passing stuff on, and then when they've failed to respond, you have a good kind of backlog of emails that you can refer to and say, well, they sent it to you, it wasn't just me, So here we go. Dear sir, the information we have is that your client has failed to attend court for a Category A serious offence and therefore fits the criteria for Crime Stoppers. Our team are unaware of any court attendance and no revocation of the warrant has been issued. Our relentless pursuit policy means that Miss Rye will remain on the Crime Stoppers list until she is brought before the court. Okay, so here's the response from the lawyer to Mr. Duffy. Can you tell me the list of Category A offences? Also, do you have any policy in place that deals with possible prejudice in relation to jury trials, as potential jurors may have seen the website in question? Would it make a difference if the warrant was backed for bail? Although the offence may be on your Category A list, is any account taken of the circumstances before placing someone on the most wanted list? Trusting you can answer my questions. That was from the lawyer. The response to him from the Warrants Department was, Dear sir, if you require any further information, please contact the Freedom of Information Unit by visiting the Kent Police website, www.kentpolice.co.uk. So that was the response from the people who are responsible for uploading pictures to Crime Stoppers, or the people who oversee the uploading of pictures to Crime Stoppers. Now, what we've got to remember is that these two malevolent scumbag PCSOs who hated this, it was an ex of one of their friends, I think. You can see the story online. It's still there. They framed him by putting him on Crime Stoppers, which means that basically it looks to me as if glorified traffic wardens, PCSOs, can upload pictures onto Crime Stoppers of people they don't like. And this is what I thought happened in the first place, because there's no way that girl should have been put on Crime Stoppers. She's not violent. She'd pleaded not guilty. The court date wasn't for 2 years, and she remained on that Crime Stoppers website for nearly 2 years. And we can go into even more absurd examples in part 2 after the break, because there are people who are allegedly wanted who aren't in the country, and they're wanted because they know somebody who's wanted. There was an example recently of 2 8-year-old kids who'd been put on there because they wanted to speak to the kids about a relative. Now, how can this happen? It's complete invasion of privacy, but this is where it's all going. We're getting to the point where we've got to accept that we have no privacy. And in my view, this is what websites like Crime Stoppers are now doing. Now, I'm not saying that that was always the case. And I'm not saying that Lord Ashcroft didn't start this with very good intentions. I'm sure he did, because he's the only person out of Kent Police, the CPS and the IPCC who's acted honourably. So he's the only person with any honour out of all this, which has been going on for 2 years. It's incredible, isn't it, Tony?
It is, but what's even more incredible is the fact that we actually found one, because they're getting rare as what you might call rocking horse poop nowadays in today's world, honourable men or women.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think it's down to liability again, because obviously that man is aware of his duties as a trustee. He knows that he has an oath. And these people who are uploading people's pictures onto Crime Stoppers for no good reason, really, these people aren't wanted. The other thing is, that's very important, is that courts like Maidstone, cases come up incredibly quickly. They're very disorganised. It's very hard to get a court date set, and they'll say, with Miss Rye's case, the court date didn't come up for another year. So it was nearly 2 years before it came to trial. But that was only because the lawyer wanted to get it off his books. Now, the point is, again, takes us back to our first kind of area, where the CPS never delivered the necessary evidence. My evidence was blocked, as we've said, and then the judge undermined my testimony. The barrister that we had in court was obviously legal aid, and she was worse than useless. And I'm not saying that to undermine her, I'm just stating it as a fact, because she wasn't aware of even the basic facts. She actually said it was me filming the police while they were assaulting me. Just basic facts like that. I wrote to her chambers, and she also stated that epilepsy does not wipe out short-term memory. So I've asked for her legal qualifications. These are the sort of people you're dealing with if you're on legal aid. Well, as we said earlier, this is the bargain basement of Tesco's. It's not Harrods.
Yeah, for sure. Sad state of affairs. Are we ready to wrap up for this hour?
Yeah, that'd be great, Tony.
Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. There's a lot of people listening out there. Thanks especially to those in the chat. I've picked up a few comments. We'll get into them later. They're in our shared Skype. And Chris will be along in the second half. We'll get to hear something from him. What we're going to leave you with, Psy Ambience we've got here. Check him out on SoundCloud if you like trance music. This one's called Cerebral Cortex. We'll be back in 6.5 minutes. Welcome back to Windows on the World Live, Part 2. In the first half, we've been hearing about the traumas that Mark's been having with the legal system, and quite an adventure it's been. It's been going on for a long, long time, and I do know that it's taken its toll on Mark the last couple of years. Got to be said, he's had to work really hard at this, and most people wouldn't have had the know-how or the time or the ability in any way to have pushed forward in the way that he has. And I'm hoping that we get some real proper result and that justice is finally seen to be done in this case at some point. Not sure whether you're back or not yet. Are you back, Mark?
Oh, yes, Tony, I'm here.
Okay, nice one. Well done.
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, when you come face to face with this stuff, and we do cover a lot of civil cases, and we started off obviously with debt collectors and these sort of other criminals. Not all debt collectors are criminals, but is a criminal professional. It's a profession that attracts criminals, basically. Can be criminal because obviously it's largely unregulated, and in a way so is the CPS, because they've only just been looked into by the inspectorate, and the inspectorate have found that in 55% of cases, essential evidence, or unused material, as they like to call it, unused evidence, is routinely left out, or in my case, destroyed. And then we've got this problem with Crime Stoppers, which has now been resolved. And as we said before the break, Lord Ashcroft has been obviously onto Kent Police, absolutely furious about what's been going on. And Kent Police have wiped their entire most wanted gallery, which was at least, well, let's say about 250 people. So in other words, 250 most wanted people have been taken off the streets of Kent overnight. Quite a result with one email, but this does have a very serious side to it, because if you look on Crime Stoppers, you get to about page 10. A lot of it is VAT fraud. Now, these people, a lot of them were already put in prison, but they have confiscation orders for extra money. So they're saying, well, you know, the British public have been defrauded out of 1.25 million. No, they haven't. They haven't been defrauded out of it because it's not really been proven. What they're doing is like a lot of this is confiscation of assets. So why were they on Most Wanted? Why are people who owe some tax on Most Wanted and have their faces put up there? I think that's absolutely wrong. And of course, a lot of them aren't in the country. There's a guy here. I won't give his name, but he doesn't look like a criminal. And this is quite funny, actually, because read between the lines here. He's wanted for concealing and smuggling platinum bars, thought to be worth around £600,000. He failed to appear in court in June 2005, so a warrant was issued for his arrest. Now, wait a minute. What was the warrant issued for? Was it issued in connection with the platinum bars? We're not being told that, yeah? And whereabouts? Believed to be in Switzerland. So, let's look at this objectively. He's taken £600,000 worth of platinum bars into Switzerland. Now, why do you think that is, Tony? Why would you think anyone would take £600,000 worth of platinum bars to Switzerland and the Swiss let them in the country? Why would you think that was?
Oh, avoid paying tax.
Well, it could be, or maybe he's just doing a deal. Maybe he's actually a trader.
Yeah.
And he's doing a deal in Switzerland. So they're wanted because they wanted his platinum bars, which are now in Switzerland. It's incredible, isn't it?
Right, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to read between the lines with this, Tony, because we haven't really got the full picture of why a lot of these people are on there, And some of them are wanted in loads of different locations because they're tagged in lots of different locations. But there's a really funny one. And there's a girl on there. She looks about 18. But this so-called offence goes back to 1999. And she's most wanted. And if you read between the lines of that one, it's incredibly funny. She's obviously been acquainted with some kind of Arthur Daly character who the HM Customs believe has been selling off dodgy snouts, up to 750 grand's worth of dodgy snouts from his lockup, right? So she's acquainted with him, and she's maybe he was her Uncle Arthur, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's been down the lockup, and they want to talk to her about these dodgy cigarettes that Uncle Arthur has been selling from his market stall in 1999 when she was about 10. It says whereabouts? America. So she's in America. It's incredible, isn't it? And once you get into it on that level, it is actually quite amusing with some of the people who are up there. So they need to clean this website and just leave people up there who are most wanted.
Yeah, make it fit for purpose.
Yes. And I think we've heard that the staff there, I mean, they use a lot of volunteers. But that lady who slammed the phone down on me, that was really out of order because she just didn't like dealing with it. So she put the phone down. But this is a charitable trust. Now, as we've said, that has been remedied in this case. But the damage has been done. The damage has been done because if that girl hadn't been put on Crime Stoppers, she would have attended a trial. As a result of being put on there, it increased her anxiety to the point where she became really ill. It made her so ill that she had to seek psychiatric treatment. She was absolutely petrified because her friends told her she's a most wanted criminal. Well, if you see yourself on a site, Britain's most wanted, what are you going to draw from that? What conclusion are you actually going to draw? That they are looking for you, they are not going to stop till they find you, and you can't go out in public. And she can't come back to the country. She was petrified of coming back to the country because they'd issued this warrant, which was totally unnecessary as well. This is another thing that I think probably happens quite a lot. And when we've got the inefficiencies of the court, especially Maidstone Crown Court, there are many people who, if they've not got legal defence, or even if they have, may not even know that they're due in court. And remember that in her case, this was a pre-trial hearing. It wasn't a hearing. She didn't really have to be there. It was just a legal argument stage. So she was not aware that she was wanted to be in court. And of course, they issue this arrest warrant, and the lawyer couldn't do anything about that. Next thing is she's on Crime Stoppers, but it's proportionality. Where is the checks and balances? Because Crime Stoppers must have a disclaimer on it for those police who upload the pictures. Otherwise, where's the liability? So Crime Stoppers as a charitable trust would not be stupid enough to let the police upload pictures without a disclaimer. So in other words, the police are putting people on there who shouldn't be on there. So it seems to be the police who are the problem here. But the problem is also the administration of Crime Stoppers. As you heard, that guy, Mr. Thorburn, his response was not adequate. You can't just say, well, it's the police, it's not us. It is you. You're a charitable trust. You work for the benefit and in the interests of the public. And I did make that point to him on day one when she was put up there. But it's only just been taken off last week as a result of that email.
Yeah, have you actually heard from anyone at Crime Stoppers since they took it down? Have they got back to you?
Yes, and it's quite amusing actually, Tony, because the guy who got back to me was a bit shirty, director of operations. In fact, let's see if I can find the email. I think the email may well be in here. The thing is with this stuff, Tony, there's so much stuff. There's so much that it actually starts to confuse you because you think, have I sent this out? And then you go back and I look at some of these emails and the files, and I've been asking for all this from day one. Exactly the same thing, you know.
So,
Now, here we go. Yes.
so what are you waiting for now then? What's the next stage here?
Well, we need to get that audio and then go for appeal. But the point is that I need to... What they're going to tell me is that I'm going to have to go to the IPCC with my complaint against the police. Well, I'm not going to do that because the IPCC is not fit for purpose. Those officers know they can get away with it if it goes to the IPCC because they're just going to deny it. Because they're going to say, well, he's got no evidence. I've got an evidence bag that's been ripped open that could have come from Kent. Yes, that's true. And it's not been logged in or out. So where did I get that from?
Yeah.
We've got the possible recovery of the files, and we've got Miss Rye's testimony. But the point is that her life's been absolutely ruined. She's a British citizen who's absolutely petrified of coming back to the country, and rightly so, because if she comes back to the country, she'll be put into custody by the police, taken to prison. And then we're going to have to appeal it from there. So she could be in prison for years before we appeal it. This is how it's working. And she is not guilty of anything. There was no evidence against that girl. That's the point. And I know you can say I'm biased, but I was there. There was no evidence against that woman. Absolutely none.
Yeah, I believe you.
Well, there was no evidence that her son, this woman who alleged the assault, didn't see it, and he was less than 3 feet away from his mother at all times.
Yeah.
So if he didn't see it, well, how come he missed that then? And all of these anomalies were not taken into account. She was alleged to have been struck with a bottle of wine, this woman. Well, this young lady was holding the bottle of wine upwards while she was telling her to leave. This woman's gone out, and after 3 epileptic fits and been drinking for 8 hours and on 3 types of medication, can turn around and say, I've been assaulted. And there's no other witnesses. Does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't make sense to me, but this is the problem with the CPS, and this is what this report was all about. There are probably people in prison now who just can't believe that they're there, and they've got no recourse.
Yeah.
I'll get onto this email, Tony.
Okay.
Tuesday, 24th of October 2017. This is after the entire Kent Police Most Wanted gallery has been removed. I've got to say this before we start this email, Tony. The guy in the press office there was very helpful. He was really helpful, and he said, Mark, this was on Monday, you may wish to check Most Wanted. In particular, the Kent Crime Stoppers Most Wanted pages. And what he meant by that, which I didn't realise till I got into London on Monday night, was they'd taken the whole lot down. However, it starts with this email. This is from Mr. Critchell, and he's Director of Operations at Crime Stoppers. I'm aware that you contacted our Chair of Trustees, Lord Ashcroft, last Friday by email, and our Head of Communications Saturday and yesterday regarding an image on our Most Wanted website of Miss Rye. I reviewed the situation on Friday regarding the post on our website. I contacted Kent Police, who confirmed that there was an arrest warrant in force for Miss Rye, therefore took the decision to keep the post live. I asked Kent Police to confirm that, notwithstanding the fact that the warrant was live, to confirm that they felt the post was proportionate. We in Crime Stoppers host the site, but the onus is on law enforcement to populate it and take the responsibility for ensuring that the intelligence is correct. Any warrant is in force, and it is proportionate to post the image onto a public-facing site. Okay, we have publishers' liabilities. Now, there you go.
Yep.
He's just given the game away there.
Nice admission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Critchell. Do you have personal liability? Because you have publishers' liability. There you go. That's the question, Tony, that I wanted from their legal department was that. And he's just given it to me. So they don't tell you anything, and then when they do write, they let it all slip out. Okay. But it says, yeah, we have publishers' liabilities, but are reliant on the contract, in this instance, that we have with the police. That's interesting, isn't it? Mm. I spoke to a Kent senior officer on Friday evening who confirmed the warrant was still live and that they would endeavour to contact someone within their force regarding proportionality, bearing in mind that I've been on about this for nearly 2 years. The fact that there was a live warrant led me to make the decision to keep the post on our website. Yesterday, Kent Police informed me that they had removed the image and were reviewing the situation, which is their right. Then he goes, this is the brush-off bit at the bottom. I note that you state that you are a defence witness. Therefore, I cannot discuss the matter further with you, and any further representation, if you so wish to make, must be made to the prosecuting authority. Now, that is totally unacceptable, and I told him that in my response. Now, I said, I will bring to your attention any matter which is in the public interest, and any matter which concerns the public interest and the Crime Stoppers website. Yeah? And so he stated that he's not going to talk to me because I'm a defence witness. Well, that is a very strange thing to say, isn't it?
It is.
So in other words, he's really backing up what we've been saying during this whole show.
Yeah, but
that they're only interested in the prosecution.
Yeah, but according to the CPS, you weren't a witness.
That's what I sent him that, Tony. That was my little coda which you've preempted. I stated that according to the CPS, I was not a witness. And he then wrote me a rather grovelling apology. And he said, well, if you want to complain about me, go to these people. I'm not going to complain about him, obviously, but I mean, it's just incredible, isn't it? But what you're up against here is this middle management of absolute arrogance and lies and obfuscation. And I've got to say again that the guy in the media there, he was very, very good. And I've got no complaints about him whatsoever. But Mr. Critchell got a slightly comedic response. So according to his compadres and all the rest of them, the Crown, the CPS, I wasn't in court and I wasn't a witness. And he had to apologise then, obviously.
Yeah. We did have a comment quite some time ago when he was playing one of the clips, and it came from our guest who's been waiting patiently in the wings for probably a bit too long. But Chris wrote earlier, this sounds similar to complaining to the NHS. They have the same system of fobbing you off. Well, in my experience, it's everyone and everything. Every corporation treats you more or less in the same way. They do have this nice, fluffy exterior that you come across on the switchboards, but it doesn't last long. As soon as you go against them in any way, or proving yourself to be in some way, I don't know, a little bit awkward for them, everything changes. The whole attitude changes really quickly. Doesn't matter who you go to. That's my experience anyway. And I can put that right the way down even to my gas and electricity supplier, who I have incredible trouble with over automated phone calls when my bills are overdue, which does seem to be happening rather too often for my liking, as well as theirs. But they harass me with these automated calls, and I've told them I don't know how many times that they shouldn't be doing it. I don't want them to do it and to stop doing it. And you just wouldn't believe the way that they treat me. It's incredible. But I have to say that I have finally got them to stop making those calls, but it's taken some 6 months of proper nonsense to get them to do it. No one's interested in what you think if you're not thinking the same as them inside a corporation.
Well, we also have this problem now in the post-truth world, that beliefs are facts, which is kind of out of the Frankfurt School. And people say, what's the Frankfurt School? Well, it's promoted this idea that if you believe something, it is a fact, which is obviously the way propaganda works.
Yeah, well, people inside corporations, they're actually believing what they're told, and they believe that their corporate law or rules and regulations supersede national laws. That's how deluded they are. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Do you want me to read this email out before we bring on Chris?
Yep.
I said, Dear Mr. Critchell, thank you for your email regarding Crime Stoppers. We have noted the contents with interest. As far as being a defence witness and you stating that you would not enter into further communications with me, I think there may be some confusion on your part. I brought to the attention of the Trust some very serious issues, some of which have now been addressed. However, as a member of the public, I will continue to communicate to the Trust any matter which should be of concern. The matters raised and much wider issues have now been acted upon and revealed that my concerns were indeed in the public interest. You may also want to consider that the CPS have confirmed that I am not a defence witness, as stated in their own correspondence. And he's then apologised to me. He wrote me an apology and said I could complain about him, which has been through. But I think we should bring Chris on now.
Hello, Chris. Are you there? Maybe.
Hi. So, hello, Tony.
Hello.
Hi, Mark. Very
Hi.
interesting.
It is very interesting, isn't it, Chris? Now, I brought you on tonight. Originally, we were going to talk about something else, but having put my email into the Chief Constable of Kent, and he will have a chance to respond to that. Hopefully, we can do a follow-up show, which will be a bit more positive. But I thought it was important to put this out. I was kind of had it on the back burner, but I suppose there's no time like the present. I mean, my kind of patience with all this was exhausted a long time ago. But the absolute arrogance and contempt, especially of this woman called Rose Tunbridge, who wouldn't answer my calls and professional standards. So I've been in touch with professional standards. They're aware that they haven't supplied this evidence, and they should have supplied it. It's basically completely ruined certain aspects of the case. And there's so many aspects we've been through, but that's one of them. But what do you actually make of it, Chris?
Well, it's, as Tony said earlier, it's almost like a standard corporate way of going about things nowadays. Now, I won't go into it in depth, but my parents were both treated very well and extremely bad by the NHS. And there's nothing much in between. When I complained, I got the same sort of fobbing off as you did. You know, you're just sort of nice smiles and hello, everything's all glossy. And then once you start to put the hard facts down, you just get fobbed off, and they keep making deliberate mistakes just to wear you down and wear you down and wear you down. So eventually you give up. And that's what their aim is. But what you was explaining, it's like, well, 20 years ago, you know, somebody explained, or 30 years ago rather, somebody explained that about, say, the former Soviet Union. You'd say, oh, it's terrible, there's no law and order. But it sounds like a banana republic, doesn't it, Mark? I mean...
Well, yes, it is. And the thing is that's very disturbing about this is I can't understand why there's clear prejudice against that girl, and I don't understand what it is. She's from a Gurkha family, and basically her English is not very good. She's quite a vulnerable person. She suffers from extreme anxiety. She has this terrible thyroid problem, which increases the anxiety. And in that, the statements, the witness transcription of I'll pick it up in a minute. Actually, I'll get it up because it's quite interesting. The actual script of it. It's quite shocking because she's begging for her medicine into this interview, and they're not letting her have the medicine. She's visibly shaking, and they won't let her have the medicine, and they're bullying her into a confession, basically.
Yeah.
Her solicitor.
Can I butt in there? Because
Yes.
I've just spotted another crime. It's a crime against your basic human rights to deny you medicine. So,
Absolutely. No, I think this may be the reason why they don't want to reveal that. But what's really interesting is that the actual... Let me just try and find it here. I'm sorry. Oh, yes, I've got it here. I've got so much stuff in here, Tony. It's incredible. Yes, there are things within this interview which cannot really be attributed to her. I don't think they're things that she actually knows how to say because her first language is Hindi. And another thing, she wasn't offered an interpreter. So she said things, or what's been attributed to her is things like, you know, being a little bit intoxicated. I've never heard her say that in her entire life. And she said, I'd have briefly encountered and went outside. She never says briefly encountered. Now, if we go, there's also very big anomalies in the timings here, but that would have to be checked out. Now, they are pushing her to basically say that she's assaulted this woman. And they're going, how did you hold the bottle? Did you think it was threatening to hold the bottle like that? What were you thinking when you're holding the bottle? And at 22 minutes in, she's gone, I haven't had my medication or anything, you know, my whole body is shaking. And PC Fowler Wright states, okay, we can go and get you to see the nurse. And she goes, no, the medicine is... And the legal rep's talking about me because I met her outside. way before the interview. And the legal rep says, no, he's brought it in. The nurse has got it. She says, I'm tired and please, I take 4 times a day. And I've been asking them since the morning, I want medicine. If I don't take it, all my hand shakes. And they say, OK, hopefully, I haven't got too many more questions for you. And if you need to see the nurse again, we can get you to see the nurse. Now, she hasn't seen the nurse, right?
Mm-hmm.
She hasn't got a medication. Well, if she's seen the nurse, she hasn't had a medication. So she says, can I quickly go and have my medicine? And the legal rep says, the nurse has got the medicine. So as soon as the interview is finished, we'll get you to see the nurse and she can give it to you. And they go on and on and on for about another, where does it end? 32. So that's another 12 minutes of questions and bullying, basically, after she's begging for a medicine. It's just incredible, isn't it, Tony?
Yeah, well, it's torture, I would imagine, for Miss Rye.
Well, also, I said, what did you say to them? She said, well, I told them what happened, but that legal representative kept telling me that I couldn't say no comment to anything. So what kind of legal representative is that? And that legal representative should have stopped that interview at that point when she was feeling ill.
Yeah, no comment is the only thing that she should have been saying, really, in the circumstances. Nothing at all.
Exactly.
Again, I don't give legal advice, but if I was sat in that chair, I wouldn't be commenting on anything.
Well, what they're doing, Tony, is taking advantage of a vulnerable person who doesn't know the language, who's been distressed, who's been in custody for many hours. She was put next to a guy who was completely psychotic in his cell. I mean, he was banging through the whole place. He was just kicking the door. He was out of control. The guy was having a psychotic episode. And she was next to him. They actually brought her down, she told me later, to be next to him before the interview.
Wow.
You know, I mean, there's loads more to this, but I think we've got through most of it. So we were going to talk about change agents tonight with Chris, where we've kind of gone into this now. And it does, in a way, lead into that. It's how these people are being trained. And they've got no respect for the public anymore. And that Medway police station is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace that the police can pervert the course of justice, and it's routine. The desk sergeant will go along with it. That's what it looks like to me. And they've now got to prove themselves and look into this properly. Have you got any comments, Chris?
Well, it seems to me that it's like you said, they're picking on her because she's vulnerable and she's foreign. I mean, I heard of a very similar case. A friend of mine was helping a friend of his, and this chap could hardly speak English, and he was stopped at 3 o'clock in the morning for using his mobile phone whilst driving in the car. There's only one slight technical problem. This chap didn't have a mobile phone, never owned one, didn't like them. And the attitude was, well, he's got to pay the fine, but he's innocent. And the police treated this chap in much the same way as your friend has been treated. To me, it's, I call it capital punishment. Those without the capital get the punishment.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. And I think what it is, they've got to get their numbers up of how many arrests they've made so they can look very good coppers. So what do? They pick on the vulnerable, the easy prey. I mean, if your friend was dressed like a solicitor and spoke like a solicitor, should have been, well, I think the case would have lasted about 2 minutes.
I think you got a very good point there, Chris, because she was foreign and they kind of assumed that I would be, I don't know what they assumed. I don't actually know what they assumed, because when you say to the police, come in, I'll tell you what happened, and one pushes you in the chest and the other starts twisting your arm as though it's normal, and they do that all the time, then what do you think of that? How can you actually think about that? You can't, because that just violates any thought of what the police are actually meant to be about. You can't even actually compute that. You can't take that in. And I was so shocked that I just told them to leave the property. Now, the thing is, if I hadn't been in the position of somebody who does actually know a bit about how these people are trained, what I would have done is probably pushed and shoved them back, and the handcuffs would have gone straight away and have been dragged off, you see. So what
and they would have had a second arrest, wouldn't they?
That's what they
made
wanted.
the case better.
You brought a very good point, Chris, because in the police car on the way to the station, they said, we're going to arrest him too. We're going to arrest him too. The guy who wanted to give witness evidence, the guy who was a defence witness, they wanted to arrest him. And that was the whole point. They didn't want any defence evidence. They only wanted prosecution, which leads me to believe that either those policemen knew that woman or knew her family or something else, or it was racialist or whatever. Now, I can imagine that the police in Kent do encounter some violent people, but I was merely asking them to come in and they assaulted me. It's not meant to work like that at all. And they were really, really horrible to in the car as well. She told me what happened. They were screaming at her to shut up. And she was, I mean, she's panicking. You know, she's only 5 foot tall anyway.
Yeah.
And she was shaking. She's frightened. She doesn't really know the language. And she's very, very naive.
Well, it seems that, what you're really dealing with now is psychopaths and narcissists. That is psychopath. Well, that's not really not psychopath. That's narcissist behaviour. They seem to get a lot of pleasure out of creating misery. I mean, those chaps that were interviewing that lady, I mean, if she'd have, I don't know, just murdered 6 people, well, yes, perhaps they'd have had to have been a bit heavy on her, but it was a very minor thing. It was her word against somebody else's. And to deny her medication like that, there must have been something very narcissistic in their mindset to behave like that, because it's natural that, if you see somebody in distress, even if they've done a nasty crime, you just can't see another human in distress.
Well, it's unlawful what they was doing, whether they committed an awful crime or not. They're still entitled to their medicine.
Precisely.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting also that on the transcript that I have here, which came from the lawyer, there's no police exhibit number, and there's no audio tape reference number either, which is very, very strange. I would imagine that those should be on there because everything else has been filled in. There's even a visual image reference on there. Signature of interviewing officer is not there either. So maybe we don't get that, I don't know. But this is meant to be a true copy. And it goes from 3 minutes 42, and I've read through that, and it only took me 2 minutes 7 to get to where they're saying it's 8 minutes. So it's this 5.5 minutes of dialogue that whatever speed I read it at, I could only get to last for 2 minutes and 7 seconds. So there's anomalies there as well. But this is the thing, how often is this going on? Because Medway Police Station is a bunker, you can't get into it. The only reason I got in was because the duty solicitor was having a cigarette outside. And then, of course, they threw me out because they didn't want me to give evidence.
Seems to go right the way to the top, doesn't it?
Yeah, but, let's see what happens now. I mean, looking through the Crime Stoppers website, though, I mean, there's the people on there. You just think, how did they get on there? I mean, I love the guy with the platinum bars. That's brilliant. That's so funny. And the girl with the Uncle Arthur Daly, who owed the Inland Revenue some money, the Customs and Excise for his dodgy snouts, it's kind of pure comedy. But it actually goes, I think it goes back to the time of Minder. It goes back to 1999. When did Minder finish? I can't remember. Probably before that.
Hit my funny bone.
I know. It's just, you have to have a laugh at this stuff, but it is very, very serious. Now, that stuff we were talking about last week, UK zombie towns, Chris, you've had a few updates you wanted to give us, which is it does tie into this because it's all about responses. And you were talking about this company. We're talking about PR companies basically monitoring people in the community, which goes into the whole Big Brother thing. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Certainly. Well, you remember last week I had this letter through from, was it Sport England, and something about health and that type of thing. And they said they want me to do a survey, and they'll give me a £5 gift token. And silly me, I should have actually sent for the paper version so that I could have photocopied it and sent it to you. But one night I thought, I think I'll get this £5 gift token. And I was tired out. I shouldn't have done. I went on the internet and answered this questionnaire. And it was, you could see the way it is actually structured. It was structured exactly around what you were saying, where they're looking for. They asked me, was it about cycling? Do I do cycling, gardening, and do I all about kind of physical activity? But the most key questions was, do I give my time up voluntarily to help in sports events? Now, that's a bit strange, isn't it? And that is all around what you were saying the other week, about these change agents going in and creating these little areas where you can cycle, and they want you to give your time freely. And I could tell that was what the questionnaire was actually aimed at trying to sort of, and the questions, the yes-no questions, most of them were ridiculous and didn't really cater for the average sort of person. I mean, I can't.
But Chris, I've got a question for you. How much more cycling do you want to see in Broxbourne? This is the important question we're trying to get to. You see.
Yeah. And one was it from October 2016 to now. How many times? How much cycling have you done? And do you cycle 20 minutes a day, half an hour a day, all this sort of stuff?
Well, you know what that's about, Chris? This is exactly what happened in Waltham Forest, and I covered it. They formed cycling groups, and they created cycling groups that were going to pressure motorists. So what they do, it's exactly how this works. They empower so-called minority groups, but by empowerment, they mean they turn them into agitation groups. So they become militant. And we saw this in Waltham Forest. They recruited the people from transition towns, one of them who was seen every Saturday and sometimes during the week, cycling around this Walthamstow village, which there's no reason to cycle around it. There's nothing there. And you cycle around it in about 5 minutes. It's pointless. With a load of kids behind him, basically blocking the traffic, taking up the whole road. And this was happening a lot. And what they're trying to do is cause conflict between the cyclists and the motorists. This is all part of it. We went into that. But yes, the thing with the Waltham Forest is what you're going to get in Broxbourne is walk, cycle, enjoy. You might have a different slogan than that, but that was theirs. And basically, you're going to see bike shelters being built everywhere with no bikes in. Yeah. And you're going to be told that everybody wants to cycle from 8 to 80. I don't see that many 80-year-olds cycling. Some of them do. But the point is this, that the people who are in sheltered accommodation, the old people there, the taxis can't get in and out. No, none of the taxis will go in and pick them up, so they're stranded. So, and then the sheltered accommodations there is going to be sold off for flats anyway. So basically what they're doing is they want these young, upwardly mobile people, or taxable people, they want taxable serfs basically, in the Agenda 21 principles, so that they'll live in these places, be good, honest taxpayers, but basically be against cars. And so they're going to bring the sport thing into getting rid of cars. Is that what you're seeing? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, that makes 100% sense. Just one thing. Somebody did ask me, I said, what's this Agenda 21? And I think we better make it clear, it's United Nations Agenda 21. Sorry, it's 31, isn't it?
20. Basically what they've done now is they've gone Agenda 2030, which 2030. Has got 17 principles which you can look up, which all goes into the Communist Manifesto, basically. Just have a look through it and read between the lines. If you don't know about this language they use, and this subversive language, then you'll get used to it quite quickly. Most things are the opposite of what they're actually telling you. So in other words, when they talk about community, they're talking about the destruction of real community and a corporate infrastructure being put into place. When they talk about social equity, they're talking about reduction of all rights, basically, so nobody has any rights. When they're talking about empowerment, they're talking about empowering certain groups to attack other groups. That's the way it works.
It's terrible. But there's a couple of developments, if you don't mind, I'll sort of mention. That is, if your listeners care to look up on Dun& Bradstreet or Company's House, Badger BC Investments, and then make a note of the directors. There's only a few of them down there. And then go on to Borough of Broxburn councillors and look down the list of names. And I think they'll be quite surprised what they'll see. And what happened is, in April, I looked up a couple of the councillors, and where it says outside interests, it was blank. And since then to now, they've added things in that 6 months. Now, could it have been my letter that I sent in? Don't know. But isn't that strange within this last 6 months? Because I checked it the other day. And also, would it be possible have we got time for me to read out a couple of comments that I've received, which people might be interested in?
Oh, yeah, please do, Chris, yeah.
I mean, I got an email from a chappie, and I'd like to mention his name, but I haven't got permission. I don't believe in reading things out unless I get 100% permission. But shall we say, this chap, he's I think a lot of people know him. And he said, he's a good friend of mine. And he said, "Hi, Chris, thanks for the information. I do know of one case." Now, we're talking about where these change agents go in. He says, "I do know of one case where an infiltrator moved into the area in order to lead, in inverted commas, a protest group against planning for a wind farm. The locals already had their group set up. The chap buys a house in the village. He is from London, very knowledgeable about wind farms, etc., and gets involved and ends up leading the protests. As soon as the planning application is granted, he sells up and moves out. Though technically speaking, it would be very difficult to bring a criminal charge here. The cost of the company paying for him to move there for a few years and lead the process would be small change compared to the long-term profits of the wind farm." And he went on to say, "And I'm sure there are more sinister ways, as you are suggesting. If they're using EM waves, it is such a good weapon because it is totally invisible." So that's quite an interesting point. But but there's another two that's come on YouTube, and I'd like to thank the people that have kindly added some notes there and said quite a few things. And I do apologise in advance if I miss any of you out. But a chap here has put, Chris, well, I think you can see this. It's a chap called, it's a lady, I'm terribly sorry, Kirsten. Sorry, Kirsten. Chris may be interested in Buckingham, which was a small rural town. We had a PR leaflet from Barrett and David Wilson Homes only yesterday about another 400 homes they're putting up, inviting us to a public exhibition about it. Yeah, I've seen them. 35% affordable housing, which I translate to mean dumping the High Wycombe excess on us. There's no jobs round here, and the public transport is rubbish, so I don't understand why. It mentions 106 and 5 million being paid to local authorities, and of course contributions to bus services and sustainable transport.
Sustainable. The S word. Yeah.
All the roads are falling apart and haven't been repaired properly for years.
Well, that's exactly what's happening in America, Chris, because they're letting anywhere that's outside a city, in rural places, they're letting the roads fall to bits so people can't live there. Now, the agenda here is probably because they're going to narrow the roads and put huge cycle lanes in and 40-foot pavements like they're doing everywhere else. So everywhere you can see the roads are being kind of improved, but they're not being improved for motorists. They're being narrowed. And
that's right.
you've got 40-foot pavements. Why do you need 40-foot pavements, And then, of course, it's like what they did with the North Circular Road. they've actually narrowed the North Circular Road. Why do they keep narrowing these roads that are main arterial routes? Well, it's because they want to create more traffic chaos. They want to get cars off the road, and the whole agenda is to do that. But that's really interesting because this change agent thing is going on everywhere. Now, I think there are sinister levels going on here because if you go and take this to its logical conclusion and the training of these people and the sort of people that they're recruiting at quite a high level, which are just basically sociopathic people or psychopaths or people with narcissistic personality disorder, then nothing's really off the charts. And as far as this word affordable housing goes, it's meaningless because it doesn't say affordable to whom. I mean, affordable housing to multimillionaires is different than affordable housing to the average person. So there's no benchmark to it. There's no description of what affordable means. Affordable to whom? It's like the council flats in London that were knocked down in South London. The people there who owned places that they'd bought were being offered £120,000 because they were going to be demolished. Well, the affordable housing started at £450,000 for smaller flats than they'd been offered the money £120,000 for. So they can't afford to live there. So how's that affordable housing? It's not. The whole thing about affordable housing can mean anything they want it to mean.
Yeah, what it meant for me, because I do live in what they class as affordable housing, and it was the first experiment in the country, so I was told anyway when I moved in here, some 11, 12 years ago now. But they built this estate. The developers were given permission on the grounds that they incorporate a certain amount of affordable housing, and that affordable housing belongs to a housing association. In my case, the Guinness Trust, I think it's called, and they incorporated that in there with all these private people around us, and the consequence of that was that that made the private houses cheaper, and only certain people were willing to move in next to scum like me, and it's I wouldn't say that it's a total failure. It's not that, but it's a bit weird around here. Yes,
I mean, it's all down to the area and what they mean by it all. But when they're saying affordable housing in most places, especially in London, it's not affordable. So obviously that's a variable thing, but it can mean, the idea is, I suppose, that it can mean anything that they want it to mean. So it's an across-the-board term which can have any kind of definition.
Mm-hmm. I get you.
But
yeah.
Did you know that planning officers can moonlight to private companies and give advice? Now, if your listeners would like to look up it was actually in the Daily Telegraph on the 11th of March 2013. You can see this on the net, and they can actually go to other. They go to developers and actually advise developers. Now, there's a legal thing if they do it in their own council, but if they go to another council, apparently that's perfectly acceptable.
Yes, this happens a lot, and I saw this in Waltham Forest because obviously saw how it changed there, and there is a revolving door with these people. They are being offered jobs by the property developers. Property developers are just basically, I mean, what's the salary? What's it to give one of these people a job? It doesn't really matter, you know. I mean, they're making millions, so it doesn't really matter. You've got Bechtel and Lendlease who are running most of it now, and they are the preferred partners. So we've got these regeneration plans happening everywhere, and it starts, ladies and gentlemen, with a newspaper that you get, a little local newspaper in Waltham Forest. It was the Waltham Forest Echo, telling us all about mini Holland, which of course is nothing like Holland. It's more like an open concentration camp. And that's exactly how they do it. So then you get the change agent comes in Walthamstow, it's Clyde Lokes, Cabinet Member for the Environment, and you look at these, but you have to look at the titles, Chris, because I was looking at the titles of some of those people you sent, and they are in the similar sort of jobs. They're involved broadly in bringing this stuff into the public domain and being the front for what is known as Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, and they don't even know what that is. And nobody knows what it is. This is the weird thing about it. You've got something that's implemented on a global scale, locally through ICLEI, ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainable Development. Look it up. Look at our article, Big Society Change Agents, on windowsontheworld.net, which contains a lot of links to all that. And also our recent one about the UN Agenda 2030. And you'll see the links. You can just go and look at it. There's none of this stuff is secret, but it's being withheld from the public. So last word on all this, Chris, about what you think is going to happen next in Broxbourne.
Well, like you said, I think you predicted it. We're going to have these like little zones, and they're going to have militant groups, like you said. In fact, you you've predicted the future, and you don't even need a crystal ball to do it. And then what we're going to get is the old jet washer brigade soon, with outside their new homes, squirting their drives. And I said to you earlier, didn't it? I think I've got this theory about the chaps with the jet washers. You know, dogs leave a zone where they mark their area out.
A bit like tomcats spraying as well.
Right,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
You notice these fellas with the jet washers always go pss, 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 pss. So they're marking their area out so other people don't go near it. Oh no, that's my theory anyway. But no, I think we're just looking at a hell-type situation that is quite true what you said. Zombie towns, yes, people just and you know, you speak to people and you say something like United Nations, that you can see it in black and white that they want to reduce the population. They go, oh, I wonder if Come Dancing's on tonight.
That's exactly it, really, isn't it? I mean, the trouble with television training is it's very effective.
Well, I've come up against a lot of people that I don't wish to sound that condescending or sort of conceited in any way, where they say, "Oh well, I watch the BBC News and I read the tabloid newspaper, so I know exactly what's going on." And
I get my news from a variety of sources: Reuters, and Associated Press. Yes,
that's right. Yes, Mr. Murdoch tells me exactly what I should think, and you know, I've even had a person that didn't like my write-up, but all they just read a few words in the newspaper, but admitted that they didn't read the write-up, but they didn't like it. They didn't like my 25-page report, but the person didn't think it was a good idea to be funny with the council or make humour out of it. And I said, well, have you actually read what I've written? No. So, are they psychic? I don't know. But this is what I've had. It's because I've done something out of the ordinary. I think that's the problem.
Well, it is. And to round up this show, I hope that Chief Constable of Kent Police gets back to the email that's been sent to him personally for the attention of him only, and we'll see what happens in the future. But one thing's for sure, the out-of-control way that public servants are operating has to be addressed. Otherwise, we're just going to go into a police state, and we're already kind of in one. But when redress is taken away at every level, and we're going into serious stuff now, people getting put into prison for things that they haven't done, or not being given a fair trial, or being paraded as wanted criminals when they're not, then we are getting to a very dystopian kind of situation. Last word, Chris.
Well, I'd advise people to watch the 1956 version of the film 1984. That's very close. That's very accurate to what is actually happening now. And I saw it the other week, and it put a cold shiver up my spine. It was so accurate.
Absolutely, and we use quotes from George Orwell. And ironically, there was an exhibition of George Orwell and lots of paintings of him on the streets of a place called, I think it's called Southwold, up in on the East Coast. And basically, that place is a prison town. You can't park there overnight. You can't camp there. You can't do anything there. There's surveillance everywhere. You can't take your dog on the beach. And you get photographed when you go in and photographed when you go out. And that's where a lot of the Conservative MPs like it, actually. They like to be in places where you can't enjoy yourself, but they probably have big properties, a bit like where you're living. So the jet washers, the invasion of the jet washers, that could be a good little sci-fi B-movie, couldn't it?
It could be. I like that. But I still think they're marking out their territory. That's what they're doing, you know.
Well, in a way, so are those people who are coming out of pods, you know. So,
yeah.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Maybe that was a documentary.
Okay, I'm going to have to wrap it up now, gentlemen. We're just running a little bit over. Thanks for your excellent insight and information there, Mark, on all that. Thanks to Chris for joining us again. Hopefully he'll be back soon and we'll get to do what it is we was going to do tonight. But there's plenty of time, plenty of weeks to come. Cheers to everyone for listening, especially those in the chat. Check us out this week. Not really sure what's happening. Don't know whether Freeman Jack is back or not yet this week. But Dr. Rock will be on 9 o'clock Thursday night. And we'll be back next Sunday at 9 p.m. Cheers, everyone.
Join me, Mark Windows, with Tony Hurst for Windows on the World Live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT at autonomousmedia.net.